Before we dive into today's episode, a quick reminder that early bird tickets for the Heart Centered Business Conference in Noosa in September are closing on the 13th of March. Don't miss out on securing your ticket to this amazing, spectacular, uplifting, connecting, inspiring, and practical business conference with like-hearted entrepreneurs, industry-leading speakers, including the one and only M. Rasciano, and just a beautiful opportunity to step away from your business for a few days to focus on making strategic decisions, getting inspired, getting motivated, and getting clear on exactly where you are headed from here. Go to tashcorbin.com/conference and grab your ticket before early bird closes on the 13th. I hope to see you there. It's International Women's Day, and if you think I'm going to release a podcast on this important day without talking about something to do with International Women's Day, you'd be sorely mistaken. It's not only International Women's Day, it's also day 8 of Tashmas, which means I have a fabulous gift for you at the end of today's episode. Today, I want to talk about the one thing I wish we would stop saying about women, given that it's International Women's Day, and given that we have the power to influence the way that we speak about each other. This is episode number 517 of the Heart Centered Business Podcast, which means you can find all the relevant links, the show notes for today's episode, and your Tashmas gift over at tashcorbin.com/517. Hello, I'm Tash Corbin, a business strategist and mentor based on the Sunshine Coast in Australia. The mission of this podcast is to help heart-centered entrepreneurs to make more money, and in doing so, change the world for the better. This podcast was recorded on the lands of the Gubbi Gubbi and Jinnaburra people. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Hilariously, I was going to end the intro with Happy International Women's Day, but given that it doesn't feel like a particularly happy time, I think we'll just skip that bit. Instead, let's dive straight into what do I wish we would stop saying about women this International Women's Day? And that is, well, if you've got a room full of women, there's bound to be drama. Or you've got a team full of women, that's going to be fraught. Or if you've got a business of all women, oh my gosh, that's going to be horrific. I've also even seen the rise of content on social media with people sharing, this is why I don't have a lot of women friends. And it's women sharing this about women. This acceptance of the belief and the propaganda that we cannot get along with each other needs to stop. And in order for us to be able to really unpack this, we need to understand where it comes from. And surprise, surprise, it's steeped in patriarchy. Ooh. From records of matriarchal societies, this belief was not proliferated. From the records of matriarchal societies, women and matriarchy centered children and life, and therefore there was not this divide and conquer mentality. So in patriarchal societies, as far back as we can see history, women who met up with each other in secret, women who were too close to each other without being controlled or observed by men were dangerous. Women being able to talk to each other about their experiences, had a chance to inform and educate each other. That, to patriarchy, was dangerous because we, in groups, when we get along, when we support each other, when we provide each other with insight, information, education, opportunity, we are dangerous to patriarchy in particular. It's literally the reason why women were subject to things like the witch burnings. It's literally why women were encouraged to rat on each other, to tell on each other. Because if patriarchy could keep us mistrusting of each other and keep each other at arm's length and trust the male oppressor instead, if we trust hierarchy more than we trust each other, we are easier to keep under control. We are easier to oppress. We are easier to keep uneducated, to keep away from power, to keep away from wealth, to keep away from decision making. We are easier to oppress when we pick on each other. And then this got reinforced over and over again structurally. Women could not be trusted to be leaders within the church. Women could not be trusted in leadership positions almost anywhere. Women couldn't go into the workforce. Women couldn't be educated. Women didn't have the right to vote. This is actually a reinforcement of the fact that we cannot be trusted, and that we cannot wield the power that is available to us when we come together. Women were excluded from the workplace, which kept them reliant on men. It creates structural requirement for patriarchy. When women entered the workforce, they were then forced to compete with each other for the one seat at the table, for the one space that was made available to women. They were forced to compete with each other in various shapes and forms, and in doing so, were taught to distrust and mistrust each other. If a bunch of wives were able to come together for an extended period of time, they would divulge information. They would set better standards for each other. Gossip was labelled as ungodly to stop women from sharing insights and sharing secrets and sharing information with each other about what was going on with other women. Gossip was actually a form of safety. Gossip is literally communication. And the reason why gossip was actually labelled as ungodly and labelled as a poor trait was to stop women sharing about the insights of what was happening in their lives and the lives of others. But when you think about the types of behaviours, the types of treatment, and the types of things that we see happen when we are told that talking to each other about what's going on personally is not a good trait to have, we think of things like domestic violence. We think of things like sexual abuse, poor treatment. Even the way that workplaces were structured to prevent people from talking about their remuneration is ultimately designed to stop women trusting each other and talking to each other, because if we had open policies on remuneration levels, people could compare. And if women were allowed to compare their salaries with their male counterparts, what would we discover? An enormous pay gap. And we can work as hard as we want to change the structural issues that plague us and continue to keep this gender gap. But ultimately, those structures will continue to dominate, and we will continue to face oppression when we continue to proliferate the belief that a room full of women equals trouble, that a room full of women must include drama, that women do not make good friends to each other, do not make good teammates to each other, do not make good leaders, are too emotional to be involved in politics. It's all related, and it all thrives when we continue to proliferate this belief that women cannot be friends with other women without there being drama, that women are somehow too emotional, or there's something wrong with us, that in groups we are no good to each other, that we can't be trusted with each other. And I want us to really look in the mirror on this International Women's Day. And I put my hand up to this because just a few months ago, a friend of mine and I were talking about her daughter having issues with a friendship group at school. And before I could even think straight, I just blurted out some kind of throwaway statement about, oh, well, girls will be girls. There's always bound to be drama. At this age especially, some of them are starting to get their periods. So it's of course going to be really tough for them to maintain those friendships. And I stopped myself and I said to her, no, actually, I take that back. And it is so pervasive. It is so wound up in our identity. It is so wound up in our identity that we as women are continuing to keep ourselves trapped in this narrative and keep ourselves trapped in this belief. We need to stop planting these seeds in children. Yes, we are hormonal. Yes, that absolutely happens. But the labels that were gendered created a specific narrative. Because guess what? Young boys also have fallouts with their friendship groups. Young boys also go through a huge hormonal transition during puberty. But instead of labeling that as problematic, as a reason why boys can't get along with each other, as a reason why things end up becoming dramatic for young boys, we just allow them to experience hormonal changes. And for young women, we don't. They do not get the same kind of grace. Plus, ultimately, when we think about the way that gendered traits are infused upon us as kids, we are trained and taught as young women to express ourselves. Young girls are more talkative, and that is encouraged. Young boys are encouraged to shut their feelings down. Now, that doesn't happen as much these days. I have so much hope and I see so much joy in most of my friends' kids, and the way that they are being raised, because some of these traits are no longer gendered. But when we think about ourselves and our own biases and our own beliefs, we can unwittingly continue to proliferate some of these with the young people in our lives. One of the things that I love the most about my women friends is how much we talk about our feelings, how much we get things out on the table. We don't bottle things up amongst each other. We don't suppress our feelings about what's happening and how we spoke to each other. We are able to have frank and fearless conversations with each other, knowing that it strengthens our relationships, it strengthens our friendships. And I wish that for my men friends. I wish that for my partner. I wish that for the men in my life. I wish they got to experience what it feels like to deeply connect and be honest with those around you. Be upfront about your feelings, not just the situation. I have an all-women team myself in my business, and as soon as I started to unpack this narrative about what that would be risking or how hard that might make it for me to lead that team, I realized that I still had a lot of work to do. I still had a lot of these beliefs that had been planted in me by other people, by societal structures, by narratives, by teachers, by old bosses. And for me, I was willing to suffer and do it harder to have an all-women team. That felt like a very reasonable cost for me to make that decision. And I'm going to be straight with you. I actually haven't suffered anything. I have not suffered anything from having an all-women team. If anything, I feel like I benefit because I know my team will bring challenges to me early. I know my team will be upfront with me about how they're feeling. I know my team will let me know if I've done something that may have upset them, that may have dismissed something of theirs. They are unafraid to have those conversations, and I don't have to try and extract them out of them. And I remember working in corporate teams where I had a gender mix. And the one thing I would say about the men that worked with me was that they were poor communicators. And looking back, I used to think that it was a good thing that they didn't bring any of that emotion to the table. It meant that we could just focus on getting on with the job. But upon reflection and looking back, I know that the men in those teams were underperforming. I know that the men in those teams were sabotaging some of their own projects because they were upset about something, and instead of actually doing something about it and dealing with it and communicating it, instead they just took leave. Instead, they just worked a little less hard on that project. They didn't agree with a decision that was made, but instead of speaking up, or if they spoke up and their concerns were not deemed as big enough to adjust our approach, if they weren't immediately revered and respected and their opinions weren't completely taken on board in order to be able to make a change in direction, they would just throw a silent tantrum. It wasn't that they were more professional, which was how it was labelled. It was actually that they were very poor communicators and they didn't know how to negotiate well. They didn't know how to come to a consensus on anything. Instead, it was always my way or the highway. And at the time, I literally couldn't even see that because I was so programmed to believe that talking about how you felt about something, that asking to get to the point of consensus was just a painful trait that women had that made them hard to work with, that made them emotional beings, that meant they couldn't be as professional in the workforce. And I am absolutely sick to my stomach that that's how we felt, that's what we thought. And that I continued to proliferate that in that environment. That environment was hierarchical. It was patriarchal. Of course, that's what was proliferated. Right? So we have the emotional intelligence to deal with the things that we raise with each other. That doesn't mean that raising them makes us too emotional, makes us dramatic, makes us something to be feared. But over and over again, it is dismissed as catty and bitchy. It's all keeping us separated and isolated. Humans naturally collect evidence to reinforce their existing beliefs. It is the default of our brain. It's trying to keep us safe. And the longer we continue to leave this unchecked, I think the longer we are going to struggle to get out from under the oppressive nature of patriarchy. It's the belief that we can change. It's the belief that proliferates this cycle. And we can change that belief. If you think about the cycle of mindset into action, into evidence collecting, if we start with the belief that women in groups mean drama, bitchiness, catfights, it's all going to be harder, then our reticular activating system finds proof to reinforce that belief. So if we see a non-conforming exception, we dismiss it as exceptional. If we see an example of where it is happening, we collect that as evidence to reinforce that belief. So therefore, when we are in groups of women, our brains are actively looking for evidence that this is going to go unravel, that this is going to go bad. When we are in groups of other women, we behave, therefore, in a protective way. We behave in a way that not only looks for evidence that things are going to unravel, but actually contributes to things unraveling. Because that is what keeps us safe. That is what keeps us feeling like our beliefs are valid and they are validated. So it might even be that you are at an event and it's a room full of women and you have this belief unchecked, uninterrogated. So you think, well, it's going to be cliquey, it's going to be gossipy, I'm going to be excluded, people are going to talk about me. Think about your behavior as you step into that space compared to your behavior when you step into that space expecting the opposite, expecting to be included, expecting to be treated beautifully, expecting to be able to have upfront conversations about your feelings, or if anything has created a sense of exclusion or created a sense of being othered, right? Think about the different way that you show up into that space. And if we can, one at a time, change this pattern, change this, but it starts at the belief. It starts at the belief. And I have a perfect example of this, and that is the Heart Centered Business Conference. For so many people, the first ever conference felt like it was healing to their inner child. They expected to come in, whether it was conscious or subconscious, they expected to come in and for it to be a challenging situation. And so many people commented on how it was like going on school camp, but this time without the bitchiness, without the cliques, without feeling like you had to be perfect and not make any mistakes, or you're going to have something embarrassing happen and then everyone's going to know about it for the rest of your life and it's going to feel like it tars you, right? Like there are so many of those stories that we see and hear. It's proliferated in movies. It's proliferated in pop culture. And so for so many people, they had some anxiety about stepping into that space. But what they were met with instead was love, connection, and inclusion. And there was actually someone who attended that event who came up to me at the first lunch break, and I was asking her how she was finding the conference, was she meeting any new friends? And she said to me, "Oh, it is so cliquey. I feel like no one wants to talk to me because I don't know anyone here." And as soon as she said it, and I changed her mirror, it completely changed. And the way that I changed her mirror was to say, "Hey, how many people have you gone up to and actually spoken to? Have you introduced yourself to anyone here at lunchtime?" And I reflected to her that this is the start of the first lunch break, and the person she came up to talk to was me. She wasn't going and talking to any strangers. She was talking to the one person that she knew. And so I said to her, "I'll go and introduce you to a couple of people, but I wonder if you've come here expecting not to make any friends because you don't know anyone, afraid that you don't know anyone, so you're probably going to feel quite lonely. And if you come at this with that mindset, what is your experience going to look like? Not because it's true, but because of how you act accordingly." And so I introduced her to two people. And that night, she came back to me and she said, every single person I've spoken to has been so lovely, has asked me so many questions, and you were right. I came into this freaking out that I didn't know anyone, so I behaved accordingly. And because of that behavior, that was my experience. And it was such a powerful, powerful demonstration of how this changes. And even to the extent where last year at conference, I was talking to someone about how I love the conference room so much and it's so amazing. And this person was a third timer. This was their third time coming to conference. And they said to me, "This is the only women-only conference that I come to because the rest of them are nowhere near as kind and nowhere near as inclusive. And everyone seems to be just out to compete with each other." And I actually stopped that person as well. And I said, well, that may be true that the conferences that you're attending or, those other events aren't necessarily as purposefully inclusive, as purposely connecting. But actually, it's not the fault of the women in the room. And I would argue that if that's the culture that is allowed to proliferate and we leave them all to themselves, it's just going to get worse. So why wouldn't you go back and change it? Why wouldn't you go back and be a leader of connection and of community? Why wouldn't you go back to those events and role model the kind of person that you want to hang out with at those events? Because ultimately, we cannot leave it just to this one event. This one event has limited spots. There's only 100 and so of us who can get in this room together once a year. I want to be able to go to other conferences and events and have a similar experience. And if we all just keep isolating ourselves in this one, how is that going to make any difference? One of my favorite social media trends at the moment is people sharing their micro acts of feminism, the things that they do on a daily basis to center women. So, for example, there was a real estate agent and she was saying she always puts the woman's name on the contract first. She always speaks to the woman about the purchase as though assuming that she is the financial decision maker and the breadwinner of that family. Assuming a doctor is a woman until you're shown otherwise, right? Like all of those little tiny acts of microfeminism that make a world of difference. So on this International Women's Day, I want this to be our act of feminism. I want us to stop proliferating the belief that women in groups cannot get along, that women in groups equals drama, that a room full of women equals something bad, something negative. Think about your interactions with new people that you meet. Are you assuming for the best or are you assuming for the worst? Are you looking at this with those goggles on the things that you've been trained on to look for evidence that someone is going to stab you in the back, that someone is going to talk about you behind your back, that someone is out to bring you down, that someone is there to compete with you? Because ultimately, the only people we are actually competing with are ourselves. And the thing that we are competing with is actually the structural oppressive system of patriarchy. The structural oppressive systems that keep us trapped and disconnected from each other. I want you to think about women that you've spent time with where you haven't necessarily had a lot of evidence that they were out to get you or that they were dramatic or that there was something wrong. I want you to think about that person and send them love and healing and forgiveness. I want you to think about the schoolyard drama that you were part of, that experience that you packed that away in your brain and said, here is another piece of evidence. I cannot have women friends. I want you to send love and healing to yourself in that moment, to your inner child, and to those other girls who are involved. I want you to think about workplaces where you didn't get along with certain women, where certain groups of women were mean, or you felt othered, you felt isolated. I want you to send love and healing to those experiences, to yourself and to those other women, because ultimately we are all acting out under oppression. Ultimately, we are all operating with these same lenses that aren't ours. That's not our own eyes. We put on a layer of glasses, a layer of glasses, a layer of glasses, and they are given to us by patriarchal belief systems, by patriarchal structures, by the system and the people who are here to continue to oppress us. It is such an act of defiance to love each other hard, to do the work, to be able to step into a space full of women and immediately believe that you are going to have the best experience of your life. I am so grateful for some of the amazing women leaders in the world who are teaching us what it really feels like when we lean into the belief that other women are our partners, other women are our best friends we just haven't met yet. Other women are our safe space. That together we are stronger, more powerful, more able to subvert these horrific systems of oppression. We're able to bring other women along with us. I haven't even started on intersectionality, right? And so I really, truly believe that one of the most powerful things that we can do is to completely dissolve this rumor that was started about us thousands of years ago that we can't get along with each other, that there is inherently something wrong with us, that there is inherently something wrong with a group of us. This International Women's Day, we are going to prove the rumors are not true. We are going to prove that we are each other's friend, support, and helper, that our gender has nothing to do with the way that we engage with each other, the way that we treat each other, and the experience of being in a room with others who are like us. And to start that off, your gift today for day 8 of Tashmas is a help thread, a very practical and tangible way that you can collect evidence that we are here to help each other. Over in the Heart Centre group, which is for women and non-binary people, I have put up a help thread with specific instructions on how you can ask for help and offer help to other members of the group. It's International Women's Day. Let's be generous towards each other and let's turn the tide on some of these most toxic beliefs about women. Plus, if you are looking for that deeper connection, don't forget to come and check out my events page, get your ticket to the Heart Centre Business Conference in Noosa and come and experience it for yourself. And if you'd like a bonus entry in the prize draw that's happening on the 14th of March, where I'm drawing all the winners of all of the Tashmas prizes, then all you need to do is find and comment on the Day 8 Tashmas post over on my Facebook page as well. This help thread in the Heart Centre group is going to help you to find a provider, to find clients, to find referrers, to find a space where you can jump on as a guest on someone's podcast. It's going to be your opportunity to offer to help with something, either in a paid or unpaid way. You get to decide. There's lots and lots of opportunities for you to participate in this help thread. It's actually more like a help web because there's multiple threads going on with multiple different things. And also, if you need help with something, it's your opportunity to lean in and ask and collect evidence that people will come and help you. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Heart Centre Business Podcast. Go and find all the details for this podcast episode and how to participate in the help thread over at tashcorbin.com/517. And until next time, I cannot wait to see you shine, and I'll see you tomorrow for day 9 of Tashmas.